already required. Where these and the opposite is actually true, is that the more people you disenfranchise because they didn't because they weren't, they're not millionaires, the more potential you have to actually destroy this beautiful system that we've built and this great infrastructure that we have. um it starts to corrode and it starts to degrade as we stop putting in. We just need a new way of looking at things, a new paradigm. And housing as a human right is what um, I really think is necessary to have a higher frequency, a greater efficiency, and a greater safety. You can't. It's not even a capitalist country if 10 people have all the capital. So at minimum, individuals should have um, the freedom of their own human capital, which is the greatest cost. Any business owner will tell you that labor is the greatest expense.
What do you think it would take to get to the point where housing is a human right?
I think it would take, and here's the counterintuitive part, right?
Hmm.
So, in order to have housing as a human right, it will require first a national conversation. It will require a constitutional amendment. It will require an act of Congress. And then what you would see is the largest jobs training and jobs program in American history. You would see a vision that everyone in America would love and want to get behind. People who have not participated in the labor force in decades would come out of retirement to build housing for future generations because they will believe in housing as a human right for their kids and grandkids. You would see for on the government side, you would see that the first large government to adopt housing as a human right would become the center of the world, would become almost like the world government. Everyone in the world would want to be where housing is a human right. And you would see other governments immediately claim it was their idea all along, that they always wanted to do it, and that this is the really something that was was their philosophy forever. But housing as a human right would create almost like a new divine right of kings for our governments, because anywhere in however many people a government had, they would have now the divine right to acquire as much resources that would be necessary to house their individuals. If housing is a human right, then the materials to build those are a part of our sovereignty. And so it would be massive for corporations. There would be a series of multi-trillion dollar industries that would go behind building housing as a human right. Learning centers, you would see the reintroduction of third places. And so we're already living, third places are libraries, parks. Third places were places that used to exist before you had to spend money every time you went outside. So instead of Starbucks and McDonald's being the only place you can go, and movie theaters and malls, now that nobody has any money to spend on those things anyway, we actually need a revitalization of our natural spaces, our recreation, our learning centers, our loving, our places to get to know one another, to develop ourselves, and to care for one another. I believe that housing as a human right would really foster this as a second. There would be secondary and tertiary places. If you need housing, you need all kinds of other things to go along with it. And this idea of housing as a human right, it's just inevitable, along with the universal basic income.
Why do you
Uh,
think it's inevitable?
it's inevitable because we're entering an age when your shirt and my shoes, um, and these things are made by a machine. There are individuals, artisans, who still produce that craft, and it's wonderful, and there always will be. The fact that the majority of things that we need, that we use, like our water, like the majority of our food, are all mechanized and highly automated and industrialized, are this. This means that there are, and now with artificial intelligence, right? We have far less of a need for many of these services industry, or that individuals can do less and less to earn a living, because as this stuff is done at scale, the cost per unit goes down and down. So even so, when individuals produce things, they can't sell enough of them at a good enough margin to make a living, and it's not necessary anyway, because the majority of stuff is electrical inputs, electrical and materials inputs, and product outputs. So these are kind of corporate. We're less like a traditional society today and more like a beehive. And what you need are citizens who are interested in various parts of the system, who go from flower to flower, checking the pollen and making sure everything's good, bringing it back to the hive or the larger system, and kind of running it that way. And you'll see that. So when people have children, they become interested in the school system. When people want new parks and new libraries, they become involved in local government. And I think you'll see that the future job that will be common, the way an Uber driver is today, a delivery, a Uber Eats person, is you'll see is that the active citizen, the involved citizen, will be really the primary job of the future. And people will still have jobs, and those jobs will pay extremely well because no one will be forced to go to it.
What uh what would you say? Because there seems to be a mentality in America specifically right now
Mhm.
that people are, if they're not forced to work, they're not gonna work and they're lazy.
I mean, look at the pyramids. It's people, in fact, the absolute opposite is true. So in 90 plus percent of jobs, individual, and this is whether they're unskilled or skilled, you could be a doctor, you could be an attorney, you could be working at Foot Locker. The vast majority of people in their jobs are depressed, specifically because they are operating so far beneath their capacity. People yearn to live at their full potential, to work and to develop and to grow and to provide at the greatest capacity they can. And I think that the great malady of today's society is that we're all trudging and drudging, and we want to go to sleep because we feel like it's futile and we'll never have the opportunity to be our greatest selves. And I think that housing as a human right will allow just that, and you'll see quantum leaps in every field imaginable, and you'll see the creation of fields that we didn't, that don't currently exist. You'll see us regular people. I mean, I myself have a GED, um, and I'm living in a homeless shelter. I'm suing the president of the United States to save $2.5 billion for the continuum of care, and to advocate for housing as a human right. And I think that the more people have time to learn, to grow, and to find their best selves, uh, you will see the singularity that techies and people like that, the all the things are here, all the puzzle pieces are here, but people themselves are caught in the necessity that is a product of wage slavery. So when housing is a human right, uh, people will do things. People do far more for the love. There are millions of people who work jobs that they hate, and they have a 9 to 5, and then they have a 5 to 9, which is their passion project, whether they're artists, whether they're musicians, whether they're craftspersons, um, and even people in the professional fields have secondary, they always have enterprises and things that they want to come up with and do, and they have to use their reserve energy and their reserve, and it's becoming harder and harder because as things become more and more expensive, they are able to be their true selves less and less, and it is causing a mass depression.
I heard someone say one of the reasons that people are at their highest earning capacity, I think it was in their 50s or 60s or something like that, is because after they retire, they finally do the thing that they've always wanted to do.